I offer you greetings on this solemn Good Friday, a day when we remember the tragedy and the triumph of the crucifixion. And I say tragedy and triumph because, as with so much of our faith, the cross is very much a paradox. It holds together seemingly incompatible truths. It is a sign of suffering and death and a sign of hope and new life. At the foot of the cross, we find both the depth of our cruelty to one another and the breadth of God's limitless love for us all. What is the cross for you? What brings you to its hard wood today? I, for one, am thankful for Good Friday because it forces me to confront truths about my life, truths about my faith that I might otherwise avoid. I'm probably more of an Easter Sunday Christian than a Good Friday one. A bit more like those disciples whose first impulse was to run and to hide from it. And yet, try as I might, life has a way of reminding me that before resurrection, there is sacrifice. Before there is new life, there is suffering and, yes, even death. And so, as much as I might try to deny it, as much as we might try to avoid it or hide from it, the cross has a way of finding us. The day that our girls were born was such a day for me. Joe, my husband, and I, and our dear friend Polly, who was also our surrogate, we had been camped out in the hospital room for what seemed like days, waiting for the big moment. Our twin girls had gone a full 9 months, and they were in no rush to be born, apparently. Finally, the doctors said this was it. We're going to induce. And so at some point in the middle of the night, it all just started to happen. A team of doctors and nurses descended into our room, and the next thing you know, Joe and I are squeezing Polly's hands, yelling, "Push, Polly, push, you're doing great, push." It was incredibly surreal, to say the least, like a scene out of a TV show. Alina was born first, and everything went to plan. They cleaned her off, and she went into Joe's arms to start that skin-to-skin bonding. It felt as if we had just truly witnessed a miracle. But the mood quickly changed. The sudden urgency on the part of the doctors told me that something wasn't quite right with baby number 2, as she was known. There had been some stress in the womb, and when she was born, her lungs filled with fluid, and she couldn't breathe. They rushed her to a table where a respiratory therapist was waiting to start working on her to get oxygen flowing, and what had been started out just a few minutes earlier as this incredible, perfect scene of joy and amazement had suddenly given way to chaos and confusion. Over on the sofa, Joe was cradling Alina, bonding against his warm skin. And on the other side of the room, our other daughter, was spread out on a table, a doctor pumping air into her lungs, trying to clear them, her arms desperately flailing, trying to find something to hold on to. It was decided that she would be rushed to a different hospital, one with a special ventilator. And it was all just happening so fast, the chaos. As they were loading her into the ambulance, someone said, "You really need to give her a name before we leave." So we named her Gianna right there on the spot. When I arrived at the ICU later that night to see her, I really wasn't prepared for what I would see. Here she was, this tiny little baby in this kind of incubator of sorts, sedated, surrounded by a tangled web of wires and tubes, monitors blinking and beeping. Her little hands were so covered in tape and electrodes that it was hard just to find a spot of skin that I might touch, to let her know she wasn't alone. Later, when I left the ICU that first night, I found myself walking down this long, dimly lit hallway. Along the walls were these large poster-sized pictures of children. A young boy playing soccer, another one with a girl doing gymnastics, another one playing baseball, and so on. They all looked so happy, laughing, so healthy. And I noticed in the bottom left of each one of the posters was another picture, a small picture of that same child as a newborn baby in the ICU themselves. Looking exactly like Gianna did. Completely helpless, tubes and wires coming out of everything. And it was in that moment that I noticed and I realized what they were doing. They knew every parent walking out of that ICU needed to see that possibility of hope. They knew we would need something to hold on to. And it was in that moment that I suddenly became aware of a cross hanging around my neck, its cool metal bouncing on my chest. So caught up in the whirlwind of events that day, the miracles we had witnessed, the decisions we had to make, the instructions we were giving, so overwhelmed I realized I probably didn't even take a moment to pray. And yet there in that hallway, surrounded by these photos, these icons of hope, the cross found me. I think that's how it works sometimes. Whether we look for it or not, the cross has a way of finding us when we most need something to hold on to. When it all seems to be coming apart, when we've exhausted all of our options, when we've tried everything else, the cross finds us just at that moment when the weight of the world presses against our chest and we struggle to simply breathe. Those moments of our life when our carefully laid plans unravel, when our hopes and dreams are shattered, when our hope fails, our security slips away, when grief overwhelms. And just when it feels like it's all too much to bear, just when we feel we cannot take one more step on our own, the cross finds us. We began Lent with a reminder that we are dust, and to dust we shall return. And today Lent comes to a close at the foot of the cross, where we are invited to confront that reality once more. Because no matter the joys of our life, no matter the triumphs, no matter the incredible moments of laughter and life and love, no matter how careful we are, no matter how faithful we might be, death comes for us all. And yet somehow, it is in that mortality that our life finds meaning. Philosophers tell us, we can't know love without loss. We can't know joy without sadness. And while that may all be true, if you're like me, we still do all that we can to avoid it, all that we can to delay it. And we might even be successful for a time, but life has a way of making sure that eventually the cross finds each of us. And that, my friends, that is good news on this Good Friday. Because when it does not come to condemn, but to console. It doesn't come at the end of the story, it comes as a new beginning. Good Friday stands at a sacred intersection, a place where suffering meets grace, where brokenness meets healing, where sin meets forgiveness. The cross is a paradox, but it contains an even bigger promise that no matter what life sends our way, we do not face it alone. The cross reminds us that when we are at our lowest, Jesus is there. When we are at our most forsaken and most alone, Jesus is there. When we feel most betrayed and most abandoned and most forgotten, Jesus is there with us, beside us. Because there is no hole we can dig. There is no grave deep enough that is beyond God's reach. He has removed death's sting so that we need not live in its shadow any longer. We don't have to spend our lives running from it, denying it, grasping at anything we can to try to distract from it. Good Friday invites us to sit with it, to linger with it, to reverence it even, to see it not as an end, but as the beginning of something new, something more. But first, we must die. Die to our fears, die to our doubts, die to the idea that we must do this life on our own, die before we die, so that we might truly live, so that we might be free to fully love. That is the paradox and the promise of the cross. We find our life by losing it, and we keep it by giving it away, as Jesus gave his for ours. As we come forward today in a few minutes, as we bring our burdens to the cross once more, as we ask Jesus to carry that which we can no longer bear, let us always remember that no matter how bleak it might look, no matter how lost we might feel, no matter how long the dark hallways of life might be, we do not walk them alone. We are not forsaken. The story is not over. And the cross will always find us to lead us once more from despair to hope, from death to life. Amen.